Hello and welcome back to the worst War Machine channel on the internet. I'm Malorian, and this is going to be something a little bit different, not something I planned on. This is going to be a video on Malvin and Mayhem. Now, this is not going to be something like talking about the rules or the tactics or something like that. This is going to be more around the model. Now, ever since the model came out, for those who don't know, it's a RideQuest, basically boss, that you can also use in War Machine. Ever since the model came out, it's been really good. It's a very powerful model, but the model itself is very underwhelming. So what this video today is going to be about is how to make an extreme Malvin and Mayhem. So let's get started. The first thing I had to do was actually buy the model. In fact, this is something I actually considered not doing. I'm going to be combining this with some other things. I obviously own some other goblins and stuff like that. And so obviously you could just convert your own Malvin and Mayhem just with having a spare jack and a goblin that you can throw on top. So it's not really necessary, but I kind of thought in order to make this conversion more legitimate, should I want to bring it to different tournaments, I want to have as many correct components as possible. So yeah, overall, I'm sure it's not going to be worth the cost I put into it, but let's be honest, this entire project won't be worth the cost I'm put into it, but sometimes greatness needs sacrifice. Now, when I open it up, you can see here how small the model is. Even though it is an extremely powerful model, it's like 17 points, goes around smashing things, killing whole armies, it is so tiny. In fact, I'm going to show you now a picture of the comparison that my buddy Luck God did on his article. I'll put a link to his article down below as well. But this boss heavy is the same size as a light. Now, I have a really bad feeling that maybe they did this because, this is a RideQuest thing. They were cards in there for the expansion, and it seems like these expansion boxes are always more expensive, and maybe they made the model smaller to kind of bring the cost down. Either way, it is a very big disappointment and not something I want to be showcasing. It's like, oh boy, here's my Malvin and Mayhem, and it looks like a little tiny light jack. So I decided, of course, to do this. And I went and I got myself an Extreme Juggernaut. This is something for you newer players that Privateer Press used to do, is making some extreme models where they take some of the more, more common and liked heavies from both War Machine and Hordes and making extreme versions which are just bigger. They would have the same base size, they'd have the same rules, but they're just larger. And so if I'm wanting to get a jack that's going to be looking monstrous and looking like a boss, yeah, this is going to be the place I want to go. So taking it out to kind of show you a comparison of just like what the body is. On the left, you have what it would have been for Malvin and Mayhem. And on the right, you have the extreme one for the Juggernaut. So you can see it is what? Double the size, whatever you want to call it. It is going to be significantly larger and exactly what I'm going for. Now, looking at all the pieces that we have here from the Malvin and Mayhem, like I said, it is going to be kind of a waste because we're not going to be using the majority of this, but hey, I can always be reusing it later for something else, right? So it's not like it's going to be thrown down the toilet, so it's not all waste. Looking at here, though, some of the things I'm not going to be using is, of course, I'm not going to use the legs, I'm not going to use the chassis, I'm not going to use the arms. However, I might as well use the head. I might as well use, the goblin on top and the controls. And even those vents on the top, one of his abilities is supposed to go into jet mode. And so the more little exhaust ports I can put on there, the better. Something else to keep in mind, just to make this thing actually legal, is I have to make sure that my end product has an open hand, an open fist on the right hand, and this kind of ball thing on the left side. So something to keep in mind when we get to our final product and we're trying to decide whether this is likely going to be tournament legal or not. Now, next thing I did here is actually build the legs. This piece here coming from the Extreme Juggernaut kit had separate feet, separate legs, and then the middle part, whereas for the Malvin Mayhem, it's all one. But already you can kind of see what the size difference is already coming to. And that's even with the jack on the right cheating a little bit because there's that little peg on the bottom. Next up was the head. Now, the head of the Extreme Juggernaut is larger, however, at this point, I don't really feel the size is what I'm going for. I want to have the actual Malvin and Mayhem head for the Jack. It is something that is unique and very characterful, and at the end of the day, whereas the other components would have something like, being double the size, you don't see that same thing here. So I am going to have to cut off that back piece that won't be fitting in, but otherwise, the rest of the head's great. So that's what I did. I cut off the back piece, put it in, and as I can see, even though it's slightly smaller than what it's supposed to be, it's still within reason, and now it has that character to it, right? This is part of that little bonus where buying the actual model to use some of these pieces is really going to make this model feel a lot more like what it's supposed to be. Next up, I want to deal with these exhaust ports, and I'm not going to replace the ones that are there from the Extreme model, I just want to add these on. So what I'm going to do is just cut off these little strips on the bottom where it's supposed to be plugging in, and then just put them on either side of the existing exhaust. So this is what it looks like after that, and as you can see, it just adds a little bit more, right? Whereas like a regular jack would be just the regular exhaust, this is something extra, and that's something else I'm gonna have to look out for too, right? As much as I'm making this a character model, I also have to make sure it's not just looking like a different, bigger Khador juggernaut. So the more things I can add here to make it slightly different, the better that is. Next up, I need to be dealing with these arms. Now I have the right arm, which is going to have to be the open fist, and luckily the Extreme Juggernaut kit is perfect for this. What it has here is basically the hands to go on both sides, and then the fingers, you actually put them in separately, so you can make it whatever pose you want. You could make it do a thumbs up if you wanted, or whatever you wanted. And of course I need the ball on the other side. Now the ball, I'm going to leave that reveal till later on, because, it's something special and something I want to surprise you with at the very end. And the other thing we're going to do with this step 2 are these kind of like leg plates. The Extreme Juggernaut is supposed to have them so that they're kind of like on the, the tops of the legs and also like the crotch and bum basically. And so I'm going to be adding these to the model, but again, I want to have something slightly different than what a regular Khador Jack will be. So we'll show you what we did with that. So this is what it looks like with those arms and those plates put on. For starters, oh my god, that hand was such a pain to put together. These old pewter models, sometimes the glue just does not work very well with it, and it took me a very long time just to make that hand. But we got there, and it's on. So that one hand, I have it set up so it's like reaching forward, trying to grab them. On the other side will be the ball hand, which is ready to do like the big, huge smash. I believe it's called like the Dream Crusher or something like that. So, I mean, it's going to be doing some real big damage. And then the plates, like I talked about, I put them on the tops of the legs because that still fills them in and makes it look nice and all that stuff. But the other ones, I decided to add them to the shoulders. So again, to make the bottom of the model look slightly different if you had it side by side with a Khador Jack. And again, making the top of it looking different as well. So I'm trying to hit both those at once. And already I'm loving the look of this model. It's coming together. This is what a big boss jack should be looking like. And next up, what does it need? Well, its little goblin friend. So it actually fits in fairly nicely. I just had to kind of like cut off the little handle piece that's in the middle there. That's where the goblin then kind of sits. And then the controls kind of fit in there in that little middle spot. There is a gap, unfortunately, so I had to fill that in with green stuff. But I don't think it actually went that bad. It actually went in pretty easily. Trying to make it so that the hand in the goblin matched up was a little bit of a trick because, again, it's not matching up the way it's supposed to, but I think it worked out fairly well in the end. And then finally, what are we going to do for the Dream Crusher? Well, I had a grind ball. Years ago, I had bought the grind game. For those who don't know what that is, it's basically like the soccer version of War Machine. So I've been using this as terrain, and I thought, you know what? I need a big spiky ball. Why don't we use the Dream Crusher? Now, I know there might be a few people saying like, all right, that's it, Malorian, you jumped the shark. This is where you wrecked it. But I really feel this is exactly what we want. For starters, this is supposed to be in the game a POW 20 AoE 4 weapon that can knock you down, and like a tiny little ball that's not much bigger than a fist doesn't really feel that. As well, understand that we're going for an extreme version, so it should be a little bit extreme. So this is really the finished model. It came together very easily, but let's kind of look at some other angles. So here it is from the one side. You can see a little bit better where that gap was that I had to fill in with the green stuff. But again, you know, having that real feel, you can see better here what I tried doing with those kind of like shoulder pads with those armor plates. And I think that again makes it look significantly different. I mean, if you look at the actual Malvin and Mayhem, it has some like scrap metal for plating. And so I was wondering if I wanted to recreate that with green stuff, but this is just kind of like an elegant solution that does that and makes it not look like a regular Juggernaut all at the same time. And then finally, just a thing for a size comparison, here it is beside a regular Heavy Jack, an Ironclad, and also beside the Lancer. And you can see now, this looks like a Jack that you're paying 17 points for, right? This looks like a boss Jack that you'd actually be worried about destroying your army. So I am super happy with how this went. And for any of you who are out there thinking about like, maybe I want to do my own conversion, do it. There's lots of ways you could be doing this. I mean, if you already have a spare Heavy Jack, go ahead and use that. There's no reason why you have to go to the extreme version. If you have the extreme version, sure, why not? I mean, of course, if you wanted to do something else rather than the grind ball, you could be doing a golf ball, putting on some like spikes from anything all over it. There's so many ways you could be doing this. And I think this is a very just good example about a spot where the community can be like, you know what, this model is underwhelming, but there's a lot of cool ways that we can actually remake this and retool it ourselves. And I said at the very end here, I want to talk about whether I got like the check mark for whether this is tournament legal. Yeah, absolutely it is. It's a Jack with an open fist in the right hand and a big ball in the left hand. And if you want to say that part of the rules is the goblin on top of the gears, we even have all that stuff too. So I really don't think I'd ever see a TO saying that this is not legal. And if they did, who cares? I'd probably walk in and my opponent would let me use it anyway. So there you go. There is my Extreme Malvin and Mayhem. If you have any thoughts on it, anything you want to talk about down below, please feel free. And otherwise, we'll catch you later. Bye.